It's November 2009, Patriots-Colts. This is Remember That Game, the podcast about sporting events that take you on a journey and maybe chart the path of the zeitgeist. I'm your host, Thomas Emerick, and my guest is Anthony Dabbundo, whose work you can find at The Ringer and on The Ringer Soccer Show. And he's a lifelong Indianapolis Colts fan. We'll eventually get to the 4th and 2 decision by Belichick. That was a watershed moment in situational coaching. But Anthony, how exciting was it to have the schedule drop in the mid to late 2000s and just already know we're getting Manning versus Brady and Belichick in November, a midseason measuring stick every year?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I think when I think about, my childhood and fandom, Manning and Brady is the quintessential rivalry. I grew up in Philadelphia as a Colts fan, a bit of a traitor to my local community with the Eagles, but I rooted for the Phillies. I rooted for all those teams, but there was just nothing like Manning and Brady. And I know that Mahomes and Allen is kind of the modern comp for it, but I still don't think Mahomes and Allen has lived up to kind of the billing of what Manning and Brady gave us. And part of that is because the playoff matchups have been so one-sided, and maybe that'll change. But thinking back to, them playing every single year, the venue going back and forth, the rivalry, the hatred that emerged, there's so many trials and twists and turns of all of it too, especially throughout. I think when both were kind of at the peak of their powers from, I would say, 2006 to 2015. It's just rare to have something so special, and I really don't think there is anything that compares to it currently.
In the early aughts, they were moved into separate divisions, Manning and Brady, and they would run into each other in the postseason. They had a great Thursday opener in 2003, but it seems like starting in 2005, them being top in 2 or 3 in Vegas futures at that point in the season, you could lock that in on the NFL schedule and be confident that it's going to be a great matchup that a lot of people look forward to. The NBC Sunday night broadcast kept flashing rivalry of the decade. As you mentioned, Mahomes, Allen, not quite there. Will the kids these days know what it's like anytime soon? And what would it take in that Mahomes-Allen rivalry to eventually get close to what we had with Manning and Brady?
Yeah, I think there's an element of it, which is that they were just unquestionably the two best quarterbacks. And I do think there is some debate, like Lamar Jackson winning an MVP, almost winning 2 MVPs in this stretch here. There are plenty of people that would still take Lamar Jackson over Josh Allen, and they could make a reasonable case given their personal accolades. I know that Allen finally won the MVP last year, but right now, this era, it really does feel like Mahomes and everybody else. That era did truly feel like Manning, Brady, and everybody else. And, there's constant debates about like who the GOAT is. And I know we're going to get into this later with NFL quarterbacking. I think with the longevity of Brady's career, it's kind of hard to debate now, but certainly like on the day that Peyton Manning retired, there was legitimate debate about like who the greatest quarterback ever was. And I think it was a fair thing to say and have conversations about, because we just watched the two guys also transform the way the sport's played. The pre-snap stuff, kind of like the maestro of the offense. They were essentially also offensive coordinators on the field. So I think about Manning and Brady. I think about that part of it, how they changed the game. And yes, like Mahomes and Allen with their playmaking with their feet is certainly something Manning and Brady never did. But again, it just feels like 1-1A for their entire careers was Manning and Brady. Whereas now it does feel like it's 1 and then it's kind of 2A, 2B, I think with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen.
Yeah, it was incredible in this point in 2009. Manning was on this crazy run. We're going into week 10, Colts 8-0, Patriots 6-2. Manning had won the previous playoff matchup there in the AFC title 06, had the most recent Super Bowl title. The NBC Sunday night crew polled the 20 living Hall of Fame quarterbacks for this one. And who do you think came out on top in that poll?
I would guess Manning did.
13-2. 4 abstentions, and then Joe Montana said, "I'll take Tom Brady first half, Peyton Manning second half."
I remember that quote. Yep.
Now Brady ends up having a great act in the following decade. Manning gets a Super Bowl where it's one of the greatest defenses of all time. He was or game manager mode. How did that what was your perception on the GOAT conversation when Manning at this point in time, and then when Manning retired, and then how that evolved over the past 15 years?
Yeah, so it's important to note that, like, at the time of this game specifically, I was 11 years old. So I was not like a full-fledged sports fan. I was like just rooted for my team, wanted them to win. And like, I read the stats and stuff and I like could appreciate it. But honestly, it wasn't really until probably the second Super Bowl that the Colts were in, so 2009, which was that year, that I really started to understand kind of what was happening, so to speak, and could have like full conversations with people. So I always tell people, like, my earliest sporting memory was 2003 when the Colts went to Foxborough and got their asses kicked in Foxborough in the cold and the snow up there. And then 2004 as well, same thing. And so it was like all those playoff losses. And I think back to 2006, I used to watch Colts games with my cousin. He's the primary influence on my Colts fandom, and how upset he was at halftime of that 2006 game before they had the ultimate comeback. And really that comeback did flip everything. Because like you said, Manning finally got the win. He put the Super Bowl on his resume. And again, it was like 2007. Brady had the unbeaten season. He was back on top. But then 2008, Brady's out and Manning is back on top. 2009, Manning has the incredible season. He's back on top. 2010, Manning struggles a little bit. You start to see that kind of the end of the Colts run. And then Brady's back on top. So it really did have different acts, because even as you got to Denver, 2012, 2013, Manning's first couple years in Denver, 2013 especially, like he breaks the record, all the passing records. They get to the Super Bowl, they beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship. It's like, all right, well, it's Manning again. And then 2014 and 15, Manning, they got to the Super Bowl in 15, but it wasn't because of him, right? So you're like, oh, this is it. But like Manning now, he retires as a 5-time NFL MVP and a 2-time Super Bowl champ. And it's like, okay, yeah, Brady won 3 Super Bowls when he was a fledgling quarterback, but in the last 10 years, you would clearly say that Manning had more of the quote unquote top dog years. And so it was just really fun, because like my boss, Bill Simmons, likes to say, who has the belt? The who has the belt really did change a lot year to year for like a 10-year period there from 2006 to 2015, when they were both kind of at or toward the end of the peak of their powers.
Yeah, the belt went back and forth, and and I remember I think last night's because this episode will come out Tuesday during the NBA Finals. And Bill was talking about how this Finals is one for the real hoopers out there, and this Indy New England rivalry is one for both the general public and the real football fans. Hopefully that this Finals goes to 7 and we pull the public in. May need to send Scott Foster back to Indy Game 6 like Arnold in Second Terminator. I know you're in Philly now, but how did you become an Indianapolis Colts fan? Was there a moment where you're like, I'm in?
Yeah, so I kind of started with the fact that, the Eagles were here, and I didn't really have like a seminal Eagles influence in my life. Like my dad was a sports fan, but like didn't really necessarily root for the Eagles. Like he watched a lot of games. He was into betting. Like he had fun with that part of it. We used to go to Phillies games when I was a kid all the time. That was probably his number one team, but like he didn't necessarily like root for the Eagles like the rest of the city does, even though he was born and raised here. And so maybe he's a traitor as well to his class. But so my biggest football influence when I was younger was my cousin, and my big cousin, who's kind of like a brother to me. He's a few years older, lived always nearby. We always went to games together, or watched games together rather. And so he was my biggest football influence. And so for him to grow up watching the Colts with him, Peyton, like he lived and died with it. He had to wear a dress to high school one year because the Colts lost a game to the Steelers, and him and his buddies had like made a bet on it. This was 2005 when Vanderjagt missed that field goal. Wow. So, there's so much lore that goes into this. And
Nick Harper, you could have stopped him from having to wear the dress. Just hop over that Roethlisberger hand. Come on.
Right. I know. Yeah. And he had been injured the night before the game, which is why he wasn't at full speed. But there's all kinds of lore. I mean, I remember I was with him later on in the 2009 season when the Colts are 14-0, right? They have a chance to go undefeated, and they probably would have gone undefeated. They played the Jets in week 16. I guess it would have been week 16, the second to last game. They're up at halftime, and Jim Caldwell says, we're pulling the plug. Like we're taking Peyton out here. and they choose basically to just punt the game and give up on the perfect season, which, 2 years prior, the Patriots went pedal to the metal for 19-0. The Colts could have gone for the 19-0, and ultimately, like New England, they probably would have come up short. They still would have probably lost to the Saints after all the stuff that happened in that game. They would have had the 18-1 year. But when you have a chance to chase history, like I was with him, my cousin Dan, and I was like, we were upset that they didn't go for it, go for the history. So I think there's all kinds of fun lore that has come of this, and for a 4-year period, he kind of abandoned the Colts because he was so hurt by the decision to cut Peyton and move on. He has since come back into the fold. We brought him back into the fold again. But it's been a very dark period really since the Luck retirement. So we kind of reminisce a lot about the glory days of Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, this game will be the last time the Colts beat the Patriots for a very long time.
That's crazy.
They do not beat the Patriots in the entire 2010s. So that decade will go in the Patriots column. But the first drive of this game, 2009, Week 10, and much of the first half resembles the early meetings in the 2000s. Belichick throws 3 different coverages at Peyton Manning, 3 and out to start. Colts send Pat McAfee on 5 times in the first half for a disgusting punt. Not what Indy's used to. They go down to 24-7, but you're down 18 in the AFC title just a couple years prior. And where were you watching this one? How calm are you given these teams' history, but also, Peyton Manning having done pretty well late in games recently?
Yeah, that was the thing about that season. Like I said, they were undefeated, but it wasn't like the 07 Patriots. The 07 Patriots were beating everybody by like margin, and except for the Colts. And that was, one of the other classic games in the rivalry when both the Colts and the Patriots were undefeated, and they played in, I think it was week 8 or 9. And it was, billed as like, the regular season game of the century or whatever. And they made t-shirts for it and everything. But when I think about that season, they had done the comebacks a bunch of times. And they had scored late. I mean, literally the week before, they needed a last-minute touchdown to beat the Texans to get by them. And they scored late. They were down multiple scores to the Niners the week before that. And so they had a bunch of comeback wins banked already at that point in the season. And, like the Montana quote, I'll take Brady in the first half and I'll take Manning in the second half. Some of the Manning's best wins of all time were coming from behind. You think about the Monday night game against the Bucs that was famous early in his career. Then there was, of course, the AFC Championship. You think about the game we're talking about now, 2009. And so you just never felt out, because when Manning got into his 2-minute drill, into his up-tempo, into his diagnosing plays at the line and making defenses, always being 1 step ahead. And then when they go fast, they're like 3 steps ahead. It was just next level quarterbacking, stuff that really we had never seen before Peyton. And we see it now, and it's like, we're like, yep, that's just like commonplace in the NFL, but that really wasn't true prior to Manning and to a lesser extent Brady as well. So I think about the comebacks and, no lead being safe. And that really was the case for that whole season, but really the whole era of Colts football, and then into, Broncos football, even the last few years of his career.
Yeah, mind-blowing for anyone to do that against anyone at the regularity that Peyton did. Also mind-blowing for anyone to do that against Bill Belichick multiple times. And Belichick has the edge early. Eventually, Peyton gets a step ahead of him. But until then, Tom Brady on the other side rips off 24 in the first half with the help of 2 bombs to Randy Moss. I don't think they had the AWS partnership then, but NBC measured that on the touchdown, Brady threw the ball 63 yards in air, and that Moss ran basically what equates to a 3.6 40 to dash and glide under the ball. Has any one Patriot weapon scared you more than that guy?
The thing about the Patriots is that, like Gronk, I feel like had more moments against the Colts. But really it was always the defense that just kind of had you scared, and the way that they literally had to change rules in the NFL, right? If you think back to like 2003 and like the shit that Belichick's defense was doing to Manning and the receivers and to Wayne and to Harrison, like they literally had to change NFL rules to like not allow that much physical contact of receivers to enable them to actually play offense, because they would just hold every play. And the Belichick bet was like, you're just not going to call it every time. And so I think when I think about the players on the Patriots from that era that I hate the most, it's Asante Samuel, it's Rodney Harrison. Like those are the two names that immediately jump to mind. And of course, 2006, Asante has the pick six. Rodney had I believe, an interception in the 2007, and I think it was Bolden, if I'm remembering correctly, that had a pick in the fourth quarter of that comeback, the 4th and 2 game as well. So there were all kinds of players that would just show up and cook the Colts whenever, Belichick was coaching them up. And obviously like Asante Samuel and Rodney Harrison were great players in their own right, but it seemed like whenever they needed a big play against the Colts, they always seemed to get it. And that was what made the comeback so special, is because it wasn't like the most simple comeback. The Colts turned it over twice in that second half and still managed to pull off the comeback that they did.
Yeah, the Patriots over the years, especially before the rule changes, felt like they could throw a bunch of Alex Caruso type hands over the Marvin Harrison company. Harrison retired at this point, but you do have the technician Reggie Wayne cooking young Pat's 4th rounder Jonathan Wilhite, who had replaced Deltha O'Neal, now his first full season as starter, but cuts to 24-14 just before the half. Who were your favorite Colts of that late Peyton era, and where does Reggie Wayne rank up there?
Slant to Reggie, let's go. This is one of my favorite things to shout like before any big down, because you just knew, and this bled into the Luck era too. One of the most important things that happened for Andrew Luck's early career, which they went from 2 wins to 11 wins in his first season, was that they had a guy like Reggie Wayne. And of course, T.Y. Hilton was T.Y. Hilton. He was incredible, but Reggie's leadership, he's still in the organization. He's a receivers coach now for the Colts. Reggie is probably my favorite non-Peyton / Andrew Colt ever. I think he would be up there. Honestly, the Pat McAfee arc is funny. And I tell this story now and like people laugh at me, and people laughed at me in 2015. But when so his comedy and like stand-up career, his media career started when he was still a player. He used to do live YouTube broadcasts Monday nights from Kilroy's in Broad Ripple, Indiana, which is just north of Indianapolis. And they would get good turnout. He'd bring players. They would do it during the season. And I would watch it on YouTube. And I was like, this guy's hilarious. Like, really enjoy his storytelling. And so I like became a Pat McAfee fan before he was the Barstool personality and then the ESPN FanDuel like conglomerate that he is now. And when we went to Indy in 2015, I went to the Colts store and I bought a McAfee jersey. And people are like looking at me funny, like, why are you wearing the punter's jersey? I think I wore it to a preseason game. It was Colts Eagles in Philly, and people are like, why you got the punter's jersey on? Like, it's kind of weird. And now
the punter's jersey.
And now it's like, wait, like Pat McAfee, he's a legend. A lot of people have mixed opinions on him, but at his core, a very funny and interesting storyteller. And I really appreciate his comedy. But I think McAfee would be up there, Wayne. And then I guess, defensively, it would have to be Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney. I mean, those were the two guys, right? Those were the two players that kind of carried the first half of the defense. And they were such a perfectly built team to play from ahead, right? Get the lead, sick the pass rushers on them. And honestly, like the injuries that they sustained, and like Dwight Freeney not really being healthy for the 2009 Super Bowl is an underrated part of them losing that game. Besides the pick six and the fumbled onside kick and the craziness of that game, really a lot of it was also that they couldn't get pass rush because Freeney was not healthy and like definitely shouldn't have played and wouldn't have played if it were a regular season game.
Yeah, and Freeney, Mathis, a huge part of that defense's strength there, pass rush. They're starting 2 rookie cornerbacks in this game. If you look at the PFF grades for these teams in 2009 and an aggregate of the player grades to give you sum of parts, Indy with the 29th ranked defense full regular season. Patriots and Colts did finish 6th and 7th in aggregate player grades and offense. Peyton and Tom tide that lifts all boats. But do you remember feeling at that time like Brady was working with a better roster in New England than Peyton from like 2007 on?
Certainly like Randy Moss was Randy Moss, right? Like that was hard to deny. 2007. the season that they put together. Just in this game alone, we're talking about 9 receptions, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, 16 targets. Reggie Wayne himself, though, 10 receptions, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Brady arc is so funny because unquestionably the best period of his career from an individual play perspective was 2007 to 2012, 13, I think. And he didn't win a Super Bowl in those years, right? So like his best performances, yes, like they came close, of course. I mean, the 2 Giants Super Bowls, Patriots fans are still kicking themselves about, but those were the best years of his career, really. It overlap with Peyton as well. Peyton, I would say, was probably 04 to 09, followed by a couple years in Denver. But like, yeah, unquestionably, the best seasons of Brady's career were not followed by Super Bowls. And it's just kind of funny how the sport works in that way. Because Manning's best season was certainly not 2006. His best playoff games were not in 06, but yet they won the Super Bowl that year. And certainly the case for Manning as well with 15, where that was not their best team. That was not his best at that point. He was pretty cooked. So it's funny how that works. But I think from a talent perspective, I mean, it's so hard to judge. I'll always say that like the ace in the hole was just that Belichick always gave New England a defensive floor that was much higher than one Manning ever enjoyed in Indianapolis. And the Colts defense had its moments, but it was not as consistently reliable. Patriots, from a special teams and defense perspective and just overall coaching, always had an advantage over the Colts in terms of how the organization was run.
Yeah, and for the this is one for the defense truthers. You were talking 2015 Broncos, and then the 06 Bob Sanders Colts getting over the hump. Whereas the Patriots in the era where the offense is great during the regular season, I mean, you look at their lineup in this game, doesn't jump off the page like the Patriots team in other years where they won the Super Bowl. PFF's top graded Patriots defensive player on the season is Tolly Banta-Kane, who solid career, but like that's your top graded player. The allocation of resources on defense is lower than some of the championship years. And the defense does start off strong for both teams in the second half, though. Antoine Bethea jumping one the end zone meant for Randy Moss. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, Patriots get an interception off Manning in the second half. Welker takes a punt 69 yards. But unlike the 06 AFC title, they're down 18 in the first half. The Colts fall down 17 in the fourth quarter in this one. Much higher mountain to climb. But as far as absolute closers in sports history, does anyone top 09 Peyton Manning for you?
Well, it is hard to say he's at the top because like they didn't close the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Which, I still think about a lot.
So if you cut it short of the Super Bowl,
right?
Are we number one?
Yeah, it's up there. Tyrese Halliburton has to have a case after this week. I was actually messaging with some Pacers fans who are also Colts fans, and thus in my life, about this because really like the biggest one that got away in Indianapolis sports history is the 09 Super Bowl, right? They're leading at half, they blow the game. Pacers fans saying that like Game 4 the other night kind of fills that vote, like that was the last time they felt that much of a gut punch. And yeah, I mean that end to that season was pretty heartbreaking again, because the Colts and the Saints were the 2 last unbeatens. It was kind of ordained that was just going to be the Super Bowl, right? Like I think the Bears made it to the NFC Championship, but they were so bad, and the Saints destroyed them. The Colts that season, like the AFC everybody thought was going to be Brady Manning again. Like we just kind of assumed that was going to be the case. And then, the Sanchez had other ideas and they end up beating the Patriots in the divisional round. The Bart Scott can't wait. And so now it's like, oh, Mark Sanchez is coming to the Lucas Oil for the AFC Championship. And like, those Rex Ryan defenses were very respectable and those were close games for about a half. But then I remember the Colts, like there was a point early in the third quarter, they just like solved them and it was over. So like the playoff run was also not that dramatic. I mean, they just rolled the Ravens and the Jets and they were like, okay, yeah, we're good. We'll see you in in the Super Bowl, and we'll see the Saints, and those are the two best teams most of the year. But yeah, great closers. Like I said, they had so many comeback wins that year. They had so many late wins. And honestly, it was just what they had done for 4 years, seemingly always having the drive when they needed it. The 2-minute drill. I think Manning is like still top 5 all time in fourth quarter comebacks in his career. So like there's just nobody I would have trusted more in those situations. Even Tom, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, in that Hall of Fame poll, there were 2 who chose Tom there in 2009.
Who were they? Do you have the list?
Terry Bradshaw. And it makes sense to the 4 titles. He's like, hey, let's weight the titles, baby. I got 4. And then the other one was actually John Elway. I couldn't think of an immediate bias in the John Elway standing for Brady. Maybe because they used to crush the Patriots so much. He's like, I'm fond of these guys. I want the Patriots to be revered because I own them. But yeah, those are the 2. And both of them get a chance to have a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter because Peyton makes this a close one again. Colts down 17 immediately. 2-minute drive from Peyton brings it down to 10 points. A 29-yard touchdown to Pierre Garçon. And eventually we get to 34-28. Patriots have the ball and a decision to make at their own 28-yard line. Up 6 just before the 2-minute warning. As a Colts fan, did you want Belichick to punt instead of go for it?
Of course. Please punt. That was, we finally got to the kind of the lead here, which is like this. If you just say 4th and 2 to the average NFL fan who's been watching football for this century, they will think of this game. And that's why I picked it. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. It is ultimately like one of the ballsiest and I think correct calls. It says so much about the NFL, where it was in 2009, where it is now. It says so much about what Peyton Manning's career is, what Tom Brady's career is, what Bill Belichick is. It is honestly one decision that tells a story about so much of the last 20 years of football. And you got it right. So they score to make it 31-21. Pats have to punt. Manning then throws a pick. I remember at that point, I'm like, all right, that's it. Game's over. Like they have the ball. They're up 10, not that much time left. There was less than 5 minutes to go. Like this is kind of over, especially once New England gets a field goal, 34-21. Colts score. Now the key was they did score before the 2-minute warning, which enabled them to have a chance to get the ball back if they could get a stop. And you're doing the math in your head like every football fan does. You're like, all right, stop here. We give you time out. Stop them here. 2-minute warning. We'll get the ball back. We're going to have a chance. We just can't let them get that first down. But then 4th and 2 comes. And yeah, at the time, everybody would say punt. But nowadays, I don't actually think that the people would say that. Like if the Eagles were in 4th and 1, we know they'd go for it. If the Chiefs were in 4th and 1, we'd be like, well, you have Pat Mahomes. You need a yard. You probably should go for it, right? But back then, it was so foreign. It was so different of a league. But it shouldn't have been. We were talking about the 2 best quarterbacks of for my money of all time, playing against each other at the peak of their powers with these incredible receivers, these defenses that have been on the field all game, getting run all over. So it's 34-28. It's been a high-scoring game. And you have a chance with the guy you think is the greatest to ever do it to get 2 yards to win a football game, or you can punt it and pray that the guy who's been carving you open for the whole fourth quarter doesn't continue to do that. And so I was praying they punted because I was like, that's a guarantee we get the ball back. All we need is the ball. It's not about the time. It's not about the score. It's not about the field position. Possession is everything. Give our guy one chance. And they did not want to do it. And it was the right decision, and it worked out badly, but it was still, I still back Belichick. I think he made the right move. What do you think?
Yeah, Aaron Schatz said there's this end of the season NFL Network top 10 game package. Like everyone give us this 7 or 5 second sound bite. Aaron Schatz says 79% chance of winning if we go for it, 73% chance if it's a punt. Pete Prisco said, I called it 4th and jackass. Now, I personally,
like Pete.
Yeah, of course, naturally. And I think I don't even need to know the numbers. I think Tom Brady is on my team, Peyton Manning is on their team, is a decent enough heuristic. We're going for it. Did you feel like the punditry at the time was super negative, or did it seem to you like some of them had already caught on that, okay, this is probably a forward-looking way to go?
I mean, punditry is inherently reactive,
Yeah.
right? Like we all watch the play and then we decide if we think they should have gone for it or not. Like they should make you write down your opinion before and then say, like, what do you think? And the other part of this, and this is where like you asked me as a Colts fan, what did I want to happen? That's how you should think about it if you're the other coach. Like if I'm about to go for it, I should put myself in the other team's shoes. And I should say, do they want me to punt them the ball or do they want me to go for it? Because if they really want me to punt, it probably means they're desperate to get the ball back, and I should do everything in my power to prevent that from happening. Thus, I'm going to go for it and try to take my chances. And we have seen that more and more now, to the point where it literally, if the game were played in 2025, I think nobody would be surprised by this. Like if it was Mahomes, if it was Chiefs Bills, and honestly, we kind of did see it last year, where the Bills were up 3. I think there was like 2 minutes left. I don't have the game in front of me, but there was like 2 minutes left. The Bills had a 4th and 1 decision in Chiefs territory. And they essentially had 2 options. You can kick the ball to go up 6 and give the ball to Patrick Mahomes with like 2 minutes to go. And guess what? If you're Buffalo, you probably know how that ends. Or you can go for it. And if you convert this first down, the game is basically over. How do you not put the ball in the hands of the player you want to decide the game, Josh Allen? And what did they do? They ran that off right tackle power from the shotgun with Allen. He runs around the right edge, breaks a tackle, runs into the end zone, puts the game away. Chiefs lose, beat the Bills. Now there's no way for the Chiefs to come back. That's how you knock out a champion, a dynasty, a great team, a great offense, a great quarterback. You take the ball and you say, you're not going to get it anymore. We're just going to keep the ball. And that's what the Patriots were trying to do. And I think it was the right move. And like if Falk doesn't bobble the ball, like when he catches the ball, he's in the air across the line. Now he bobbles it and then lands in front of the line, thus the possession, like he didn't get it. Fine. But like we're talking about like 2 inches away from winning the game on a play they didn't execute right. So I just think it's crazy looking back at how different discourse was then and how different it is now. And just understanding that, like, this would be a commonly accepted, perfectly normal thing to do. And yet Belichick got murdered for it in the time for weeks and months and honestly years. It became like the running discourse of 4th down decision. Like, honestly, still to this day, might be the most consequential 4th down decision that was made in the last 25 years of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, right. Chris Collinsworth at the end says that this is a call by Belichick. They're going to be talking about for a long, long, long time. And I don't think they were super negative on it, but they just spoke on how it was provocative and great finish to the game because Peyton then drives him down to the goal line, goes after Will Height with Reggie Wayne again.
Reggie, let's go.
To Reggie, almost automatic. Stover with the extra point, 35-34, 13 seconds left. It's over. Belichick generally makes decisions without too much care for the critics. At least it seemed over his time in New England. 6 Super Bowl wins, not bad. But ahead of his time in a lot of things. But the critics are Rube's attitude. Could that be a double-edged sword at times for your rival Patriots over 20-plus years?
Well, the thing that's funny about it is that Belichick is not inherently aggressive. Like, we have all the data for this now, and we've had enough data of Belichick coaching in the league in the last, whatever you want to say, the analytics revolution happened. I would say 2017-18 is when 4th downs really started to become more popular. So we have like 4 years of data, Belichick doing this, 5 years. And his teams were never particularly aggressive. Now, they were never particularly great offensively, those Mac Jones years and kind of the end of Brady. So maybe that changes it. But Belichick inherently is not an aggressive coach. And so you do wonder, because you're thinking back to the game and you're like, well, it wouldn't necessarily be Belichick default. He's not Dan Campbell, right? He's not like, we're going for it. He's not Riverboat Ron when he had Cam Newton running quarterback power on 4th and 1 every time that one year. where he felt like they had an edge. He's not the Eagles even running the tush push. Like honestly, Sirianni to this day, not that aggressive. He just has the tush push. So they just go for it a lot. So Belichick kind of fits that group of coaches who are like selectively aggressive. And so for him to choose that moment is interesting. We know what it says about Peyton, the fact that field position being kind of overrated. It's like, what's 40 yards when you're facing Peyton Manning? He can make up 40 yards in 3 plays in 35 seconds if he really needs to against a prevent 2-man, 2-minute drill defense. So, I think it's not right to just assume Belichick is always right. I wouldn't give the benefit of the doubt to pretty much anybody in that regard. But with him to make an out of character decision, even though like mathematically it was clearly correct, I think you have to at least give him a marginal idea that he has a little bit more to know about his defense than maybe you do, right? Like we don't know what his defense is thinking or feeling or how their energy levels are at the moment. Maybe he feels like his game plan has been solved and he's not going to be able to get this stop. Like there are so many chess moves that we're just not really ever going to be fully privy to question a decision like that, for sure.
Man, last question here. Any inkling that the Colts would beat New England 0 times in the next decade? What's it been like since then, and how much do you miss this era of Colts football?
I mean, more than you could imagine. I think Luck never having a win against the Patriots is really annoying, frustrating, because as much as Andrew Luck is a legend and produced some incredible moments of football in Indianapolis for the short and too short of a time we had him, it did feel like when the Colts had Jim Caldwell and Tony Dungy, and then you could even go into like the Denver era of the Manning Brady thing, like Belichick was always the better coach, but it didn't feel like such an uphill slanted battle that you had no chance. There were like the Chuck Pagano era, and I love Chuck Pagano as a person. Like the Chuck Pagano era of Colts football was so rough because it just felt like they started every game down 10. Like they got off the bus down 10. And when you're doing that against Belichick and that defense and Brady and, they could never stop the runs. And then they would just, like Jonas Gray. I'll never forget the Jonas Gray game where some guy came off the street and ran for 250 yards against the Colts. The Deflategate game when, the AFC Championship, they literally got annihilated so badly that it became we look like sore losers because we're talking about the air pressure in the football in a game that they lost. I don't even remember the score, but it was something to 7, maybe 50-7 or 40 something to 7.
But yeah, put as much air in the ball or little as you want. The Colts are coming within 20 points. They
could have been playing with rugby balls and it wouldn't have been pretty. So I just think that was so disheartening because with like the idea of Andrew Luck was that it was going to be Andrew Luck joining, Manning, Brady, Rivers, Roethlisberger, and like the AFC was just going to be, and it kind of has been that way, I think, for the last, 20, 25 years, where it's just been like, you either have this Super Saiyan quarterback demigod or you don't. And like, that's, football isn't that reductive, but like it kind of is in the AFC for the last 25 years. The NFC has kind of been the conference where you can build a great roster and you can kind of make it more of a team thing. In the AFC, it was like, well, outside of that one Joe Flacco run, you either had Pat Mahomes, you either had Peyton Manning, you had Ben Roethlisberger, or you didn't make the Super Bowl, right? Like that was just kind of how it worked. Like Tom Brady, that was it. Like those were the only guys who made Super Bowl runs. And it kind of felt like the Colts were going to be that next team, especially once, the Colts beat Manning in 2014 when Manning was clearly injured. And I'm like, all right, like we're here. We're in the AFC Championship. Okay, we got annihilated, but like we're going to be back. And then injuries, bad coaching decisions, bad roster building. And then again, it felt like they were going to be back. 2018, Colts are back in the divisional round. They finally have a coach I like, and they built the O-line. And then Luck to have that shock retirement. Like it really, a small part of me died when Luck retired in 2019, I guess it would be now. And I still haven't really come to terms with it as a football fan. Like it just kind of I haven't really recovered as a fan. I still love the league, still love my Colts. I still watch them every week, but there is an element of like, man, Andrew Luck is how old right now? Like he'd still be playing He'd still be probably one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not watching that, and I'm watching Phil Rivers and Carson Wentz and Jacoby Brissett and Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco and Gardner Minshew, and it's just like a revolving door of not inspiring play. And the organization really hasn't recovered. And you could say whatever that says about the organization or the people running it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they haven't really beaten New England, I think they beat them in the regular season once or twice since. But basically, when Brady was there, they never beat him again. That's insane. If you told me that in 2009, I think everybody would have laughed at you and said you're a delusional maniac. So yeah, it's a sad state on the rivalry. And, we kind of just ported it over. We just kind of were like, yeah, I'm also rooting for Manning when he's on the Broncos against Brady. So